It's always the biggest satisfaction to see people enjoy the food. For me, it's always the eyes closed and the ums and ahs, and that's kind of the stuff that I live for. So especially when somebody's trying something of mine for the first time, it never gets old. I mean, I can do it day in and day out, and that's what keeps me hustling every day. Hey guys, this is Hustle with Hondo, and this is my story. I was a graphic designer for 13 years. I've always been interested in street art. Ran one of the biggest shops in the Bay Area. Apparel, graphic design, trailer wraps. I mean, pretty much anything to do with any industry, we were doing all of it. I just kind of started picking up smoking as a hobby. My family, we had barbecues every weekend, just to get together. Then one day, probably in my early 20s, I picked up my first smoker, which happened to be at Oklahoma Joe's Highland. And I absolutely fell in love with it. One Christmas with my wife's family, one of her cousins actually told me, this is really good. The next week, he sends me this link, and it happened to be a rib cook-off at a church. And out of 32 teams, we finished 5th place. At that point, I was like, you know, I don't suck at this. So, I mean, let's give it a go. So along my journey, you know, someone who really supported me was my wife. She's kind of always been there, and every time I get down on myself or I think, you know, maybe this is something that I shouldn't be doing, or maybe, you know, this isn't the right time. She was the first one to be like, you know that that's not true. You know, everybody loves your food. You know that that's just, you know, you and your head and your anxiety getting the best of you. I was still doing t-shirts and graphic design, which caught the attention of one celebrity pitmaster out in Texas. And he actually, you know, contacted me to do some of his shirts. He just happened to notice that I was into smoking too. And he said, hey man, you want to come out and cook with me? And I'm like, dude, hell yeah, like let's do it. After, I don't know, probably about 5 or 6 months, I was out there in Texas every month, just learning from some of the best brisket cooks that are out there. I just kind of soaked it all up. When I got back, I actually ended up getting laid off from my graphic design job. And out of necessity, I started to sell barbecue plates out of my home just to make money. I happened to hook up with a friend of mine who had an opportunity to open a business here, and it became a very popular spot in town. Then COVID hit. At that point, I told my wife, you know, we need to start making money for ourselves. We ended up investing in a food trailer, and, you know, that's how we got to where we're at now with one of the best, you know, food trailers in town that's doing barbecue. These are our tri-tips. They've been smoking for about an hour and a half. Everybody loves tri-tip in this area. If I were to say my favorite dish, hands down would have to be tri-tip. I mean, that's like California's brisket. Being in Texas, you know, I was telling these guys, oh, you guys gotta have tri-tip. They're like, what the hell is that? And I actually had tri-tip that I cryovac, and I packed it up, trimmed it, took it out to Texas. We ended up turning that in as a chef's choice, and we ended up winning, you know, we ended up walking the stage with that. Today, you know, it's been a long day, so, you know, me and the crew decided to get together, and basically what we're gonna do is a family favorite. We're gonna do our bacon wrapped stuffed jalapenos. So we're gonna start with some pretty good sized jalapenos. When you go to the store, the nice thing is you're able to pick them out. I always go for the bigger ones, just because they can hold more filling with it. We're basically gonna split these guys right down the middle. We're only gonna use half of a jalapeno per wrap. This is where all your heat's gonna be at. So we're gonna take all the vein, all the seeds, everything else from the inside. If you still have some of it in there, it's fine. You can either scrape it out with your finger if you want, or if you want to leave it for some of the people that are they're heat seekers, they kind of like that spice on them, you can leave it in there. We're gonna go ahead and make our cheese mixture. I'm gonna start with some softened cream cheese. We're gonna do some shredded cheddar. We're gonna go with some sliced green onions. That's gonna give you a nice little contrast, a little bite on the inside of that guy. And then we're gonna add our diced pimentos. So probably half of a jar for this amount. And for this guy, I'm probably gonna do a scoop of mayo. That's gonna give you a nice offset, counterbalance for your flavor there out of my tiny jar of mayonnaise. So we're gonna get this all mixed up here. Roll this out for the stuffing for the inside of the jalapenos. You still want it kind of chunky and kind of thick because you want it to stand up to that heat and not kind of ooze out of that jalapeno when you're gonna roll it. Just gonna go in here with our hands. You can see that it's still chunky. You can still kind of play with it, almost like Play-Doh. We're just gonna get a nice little roll in there. We're gonna put this right inside of these halves. You can kind of overstuff it if you want because that cheese is gonna melt. Okay, so we're gonna set our halves aside. Now, a little trick that I learned about doing so many of these jalapenos is you basically want to take the back of your knife and you just want to play this bacon out and just kind of thin it out, and it's going to stretch everything out, and it's basically going to double in size. This is going to thin out your bacon so you don't have to cook it as long. Plus, it helps with the bigger jalapenos. We're going to start with the bottom and just kind of wrap this guy over. You want to make sure that no cheese is showing. And you're just gonna fold over with just that seam, just enough. And with the bacon being thin, you wanna be careful not to tear it because then your cheese is gonna ooze out of there. But just top to bottom, nice and cozy. You're gonna stick a toothpick in to hold that bottom part in place. Now, when it comes to the seasoning part, you can pretty much do whatever you want, but for us, because it's bacon, our rib rub is what we go with. We do a sweet and savory from Blues Hog, it's great. We're just gonna season this up on the outside. Just enough and not too much. You wanna be able to get some color on there. And after this is seasoned up a little bit, the salted sugars in these rubs, you're gonna wanna let them set in the refrigerator for at least 30 minutes before you put them on the smoker. That rub's gonna react with the bacon. It's gonna pull some of the moisture out of it, which gives you a crispier result with your bacon on the outside. Plus it's letting that flavor get real deep in there, and you can't lose with that guy. So we're gonna finish up the rest of these guys and then we're gonna get them in the smoker. Okay, so we just got these guys out of the fridge. They've been chilling for about 30 minutes. We're letting that rub set in. This pit right now is probably about 300 degrees. We got her started up. We got some pecan chunks in there. Now we're gonna put these on the top shelf. We're gonna get some smoke and we're gonna let these guys run for about 45 minutes and then we're gonna check on them, see if we need to flip, make sure that bacon's all rendered out, getting nice and crispy, that the jalapenos cooked all the way through, and make sure our cheese isn't oozing out either. That is our bacon wrap stuffed jalapeno recipe. Even if it's not a holiday, if it's just an excuse to get together over the weekend, everybody knows that when they come over, they're getting smoked meat or smoked something, there's something's going on the grill. It's literally every other weekend and just another excuse for me to get together with my family. And, you know, people love coming over because they know they're gonna eat good and, you know, go home full. So that's gonna be all she wrote.